Let's go to my guy, Dane Brugler. I try to get him on my shows as often as I can. Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Sometimes he's on the College Draft Podcast. He does a terrific work. I don't know anybody that puts in the time that Dane does. Dane, I want to start with this. Thank you so much for coming on the show, as always. Who were your top, and this is documented, so don't try to lie now. Who were your top 5 quarterbacks coming into this year in college football for the 2026 NFL Draft?
So if we go back to my top 50 that came out in August, it would have been Arch Manning, Lenora Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier, Fernando Mendoza, and Drew Aller. Top 5. And they would have spanned between 2 and like 35 in the top 50. Safe to say, or that Arch Manning, projection has not panned out the way we thought it would. I don't even think we consider him a 2026 prospect anymore. We're looking at him at 2027 and beyond. Nussmeier, everything that's happened with that LSU offense, that's been a struggle. Lenora Sellers is tough because the talent is evident. And you watch South Carolina play, and I don't think that the quarterback's the problem. And so Lenora Sellers is still just 20 years old. He's a young player, and he'll have a big decision to make after this year about what his future holds. He's a South Carolina kid. His younger brother's on the team. So transferring isn't exactly an obvious answer for him. Do you go to the NFL? Do you really think going back to South Carolina is going to make you better? So Lenora Sellers kind of in a weird spot. Fernando Mendoza was a top 20 prospect coming in. He has only elevated himself with the way he's played as a first-year starter at Indiana, coming over from Cal. He's got the Hoosiers as a national title contender. And then Drew Aller, unfortunately, things did not play out the way he had hoped over the first month of the season. And then, unfortunately for him, he doesn't have the second half of the season to kind of rectify that and make things better after that season-ending ankle injury that is going to sideline him for who knows how long. Hopefully we see him back during the draft process so he can throw for scouts.
All right, so who are like the top 3 or 4 guys now? So, Paulie and I just went over a bunch of teams might be drafting quarterbacks in the top 10. It sounds like Mendoza's the only guy that's still one of the top 3 or 4 now. Is that right?
Well, I think that if you're going to put odds on it right now, I think Mendoza is the odds-on favorite to be the first quarterback drafted. I think he's a very similar skill set to, say, like a Jared Goff, where the physical traits aren't necessarily going to wow you, but it's the football IQ. It's what he does pre and post snap. That Indiana offense is very RPO heavy, so he does a great job of reading the defense, understanding what they're trying to do, and then finding solutions. He's very accurate. You see a lot of back shoulders. You see a lot of in that RPO offense. It's all based on the run. So it's something that I'm hoping that we see Indiana, Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, just to see Mendoza go up against a defense the caliber of Ohio State. That can be really fun for evaluation purposes. But after Mendoza, then I think you talk about Ty Simpson at Alabama. The trouble with Ty Simpson is he's a first-year starter. I mean, he's the rare case of a player who graduated college before he threw his first touchdown pass in college. Like, you just don't see that in today's NFL because if you're blocked on the depth chart, you're going to transfer. Well, Ty Simpson, who's a 5-star kid, waited his turn behind Bryce Young, and then 2 years of Jalen Milroe, finally gets his chance now, and you watch the tape and you see an NFL starter. But if he declares after this year, he's going to have 13, 14, 15 starts, and that's tough. You look back the last 10 years, quarterbacks that have had 25 or fewer starts, we're talking about the Mitchell Trubiskys, the Anthony Richardsons. The best quarterback who had such meager experience and has done well is Sam Darnold. But he's on his 5th team. He needed those bumps along the road to become the quarterback that we're seeing today in Seattle. And then Dante Moore at Oregon would be the other one I would want to mention. But he's 20 years old, still young. Oregon pays well. I think there's a good chance we see him go back for another year for the Ducks. So a lot will depend on these underclassmen and which guys come out.
It's kind of weird, though, Dane, because hearing you talk and seeing what happened with, especially, I would say, Nussmeier, Aller, and Sellers, if I'm advising Simpson, Moore, Mendoza, I feel like I tell them to go, because sometimes you come back for that next year, You could play worse. You could get hurt. There's a larger sample size of people kind of picking out your warts. I mean, who's to say that if Simpson and Moore and Mendoza all came back next year, that they wouldn't have this similar things happen to them that happened with Nussmeier, Aller, Sellers, and Manning?
It's true, but I think there's two sides of it, and especially in today's NIL, when you could, Carson Beck could have left for the NFL and maybe been a third round pick, but he went back to school and he's making what $4 million this year, and he's still probably gonna be a third or fourth round pick. With Sellers, he's in a tough spot, but if he were to be on the quote unquote open market in college football, he would get paid pretty handsomely. And I still think that his skill set will be very popular when it comes to the 2027 draft. But I think it's very telling that the Jets, they were perfectly fine picking up those 2027 draft picks in the first round when they made the trades this week. And I think that is very intentional when you look at the quarterbacks this year and then the quarterbacks for next year. I know it's very cliche to say, oh, just wait for next year's class. It's going to be better. I don't. Scouts. They look at it and they think that's kind of true this year. Next year, you talk about maybe an Arch Manning. We'll see where he's at. Julian Sayin, what he's doing at Ohio State. They're looking at a 2027 quarterback class, especially if Dante Moore goes back, Lenore Sellers goes back, and thinking that 2027 quarterback class could be where teams really think they can strike gold. And we'll see how, and teams thought that last year. The Browns thought it was a one quarterback draft last year, and Cam Ward went number one. And so the Browns at number two, they went to plan B. And, that's how things played out for them. This year, we'll see who comes out. I think Fernando Mendoza will come out, and then any other underclassmen. And that there will be a trickle down effect. There'll be a domino effect of how these teams operate and how they look to move around in the draft.
All right, so Dane, I don't want you to say anything other than this guy's name because I know your answer because I've seen your answer, but then I'm going to see something with the guys. Your number one prospect for the 2026 NFL draft right now, what is his name?
Arvell Reese.
Okay. Fritzy, who does Arvell Reese play for?
No clue.
Seaton, what position does Arvell Reese play?
Linebacker.
Marvin, do you know the answer to either one of those questions?
Edge?
I'm going to think that Paulie, do you know about Arvell Reese?
I read his stuff before he came on. I read Dane's stuff before he came on.
Okay, so you cheated.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not cheated. I read before the question.
But isn't that crazy that the number one, I mean, Dane, I never heard of the guy last year. So he didn't play last year, and now he's just getting time. He's an edge rusher for Ohio State, and I see Dane's clips on social media. He's awesome. Where do they get these guys? Because he came out of nowhere, and he's now your number one prospect?
Well, he's a Cleveland Glenville kid, and so he did start a few games last year, but it was more in an injury situation. But yeah, it's rare to find 6'4", 240-pound linebackers, and Ohio State has two of them with Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese. Both are going to be first-round picks. Reese, the way he has played this year and really elevated his game, he is that true hybrid where you want to play him off the ball, he can do that. You want to play him on the edge, he has shown that he can do that with his length, with his power. The violence in his hands is phenomenal. And so you see a guy like Abdul Carter go high last year. That's what we're looking at right now with Arvell Reese, a similar type of player in terms of impact and what you think you're getting. But coming into the year, Arvell Reese wasn't in my top 50 because it was all potential and it was all, okay, we've seen flashes, but until we see it snap in, snap out, it's still a wait and see type of situation. But I think it was evident from the first game against Texas, this guy is different. The different ways you can deploy him, he could be a spy, and he's going to have the burst to chase down the quarterback. You want to go up against a guard one-on-one, he can do that because he can win with power, he can win with quickness. If you want to drop him in space, in coverage, he can cover a wheel route, cover an angle route with a running back. So it's just everything that he does is really impressive. But I do think relative to most years, he would not be exactly what you're looking for in the top player in the draft. This is a very light year relative to other years when we're talking about top 5 overall picks. So if you don't love one of these quarterbacks this year, might not be a great year to be drafting in that top 5.
So as I was saying, Dane Brugler has no idea what he's talking about. The number one player in college football wasn't even in his top 50 before the season. So don't follow Dane on social media at DP Brugler. He's got no idea. So Dane, last question for you. Big game tomorrow, Texas Tech BYU. Now, they both have some real dudes, right? And I think this is as a result of NIL that, Texas Tech brought these guys. I mean, there are like legit NFL high round picks on these teams tomorrow, right?
No doubt, and specifically Texas Tech, especially that defense. And that's not what you think of when you think Texas Tech football, right? But David Bailey coming over from Stanford, he's going to be a first-round pick, maybe a top 15 pick. He's a bullet off the edge. The speed that he plays with, converting that speed to power, really impressive. Romello Height on the other side, not as highly ranked as a prospect, but he'll still be drafted and be someone that is part of a rotation. Jacob Rodriguez at linebacker, and then on the interior, guys like Lee Hunter, a defensive tackle who's former 5-star kid. And so this is Texas Tech has been ponying up the cash, and it's paying out in a big way. When we watch the games, and we'll see it on draft weekend when we see a lot of those Texas Tech defenders drafted. I do think Texas Tech's going to win that game, and they're going to be in pole position to win the Big 12 and get one of those spots in the college football playoff.
That is Dane Brugler. He's the NFL draft analyst for The Athletic. He's fantastic. I try to get him on the Ross Tucker podcast as often as I can. Check him out on Twitter X at DP Brugler, but just go ahead and subscribe to all of his stuff over at The Athletic. There's nobody better. Dane, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. You're the best, Ross.